welcome Mrs. Melissa Otto of Fidelity International and Mr. Pete Yongvanich.
สวัสดีครับท่านผู้มีเกียรติท่านผู้บริหารธนาคารกรุงเทพนะครับเรามาเจอกันอีกครั้งหนึ่งนะครับหลังจากที่ได้รับฟังนะครับเซสชันที่แล้วนะฮะเรื่องการเมืองเรื่องอัตราดอกเบี้ยนะครับดูเหมือนว่าพวกเราคงจะอยู่ในสภาวะที่อัตราดอกเบี้ยต่ำไปอีกสักพักหนึ่งนะครับผมอยากจะชวนท่านผู้มีเกียรตินะครับเปลี่ยนบรรยากาศนะครับมาคุยถึงเซกเตอร์การลงทุนนะครับที่ให้ผลตอบแทนสูงนะครับและมีการเปลี่ยนแปลงอย่างรวดเร็วนะครับแล้วก็เกี่ยวข้องกับพวกเราในการใช้ชีวิตประจำวันนะครับนั่นคือเทคโนโลยีเซกเตอร์นะครับเราได้รับเกียรติเป็นอย่างสูงนะครับจากพาร์ทเนอร์ของเรานะครับก็คือ Fidelity นะครับคุณ Melissa Otto นะครับที่เป็นผู้เชี่ยวชาญในแง่ของเทคโนโลยีนะครับมาพูดคุยกับเราในวันนี้นะครับก่อนอื่นท่านผู้มีเกียรติทราบไหมครับว่าถ้าท่านผู้มีเกียรติลงทุนในหุ้นแฟงนะครับเคยได้ยินไหมฮะ FANG นะครับแฟงนะครับก็คือ Facebook นะครับ Amazon นะครับ Netflix แล้วก็ Google นะครับปีที่ผ่านมานะครับเฉลี่ยของกลุ่มนี้นะครับ20 กว่า%นะครับเมื่อเปรียบเทียบกับ S&P 500 ประมาณ 7% นะครับไม่ใช่เฉพาะแค่ปีที่ผ่านมานะฮะถ้าเรามองย้อนกลับไป 2-3 ปีเนี่ยหุ้นในกลุ่มนี้นะครับให้ผลตอบแทน100 กว่า%นะครับเปรียบเทียบกับ S&P ประมาณ20 กว่า%นะครับเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยเราจะมาลองคุยกันว่านะครับว่าจริงๆแล้วเนี่ยการมีผลตอบแทนอย่างเงี้ยนะครับมันจะเกิดบับเบิ้ลหรือเปล่านะครับเราคงจำกันได้นะครับคิดว่าท่านผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านอาจจะอยู่ช่วงนั้นนะครับที่บับเบิ้ลแตกในช่วงปี1997ถึง2001นะครับเราจะลองมาดูว่าจริงๆแล้วเนี่ยเหตุการณ์พวกนั้นเนี่ยมันจะกลับมาอีกไหมนะครับแล้วก็รวมไปถึงเทคโนโลยีใหม่ๆนะครับที่มา disrupt นะฮะชีวิตความเป็นอยู่ของเราเนี่ยมันจะเป็นอย่างไรนะครับแล้วก็จะดูว่าเทคโนโลยีต่างๆเหล่านี้เนี่ยจะก่อให้เกิดการลงทุนของเรามากน้อยแค่ไหนอย่างไรนะครับเพื่อไม่ให้การเสียเวลานะครับเดี๋ยวเรามาเริ่มคุยกับคุณมาริซากันเลยนะครับ Thank you for joining us this time.
Thank you, Pete. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Okay, thank you. Just want to start the question with investor in still remember the dot-com bubble, during 1997 to 2001. And more are linking to the recent rally in the technology stock. They link it back to see whether this time is the same or is it different. Can you share with your view on this rally?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that the tech sector has been a very compelling place to be invested. On average, the past 4 years have netted around 25% returns if we just simply look at the index. And then from an active management perspective, upside from there. So if we look back into 2000, the top of the tech bubble, what's different today? And I would say ultimately what is probably the most compelling difference is total addressable market. And simply the fact that I'm sitting here in Bangkok today is really a testament to that. The presence of the emerging markets, the emergence of middle-class consumers in China, in Southeast Asia, in India, have really allowed many consumers to leapfrog technology and become a part of this technological revolution in a way that's driven growth like we've never seen before.
Okay, so that means we just told the Thai audience about if you invest in FANG group, so the performance have been spectacular, So do you know why are investors so focused on this group of the companies, and is it the real earning coming out, or what happened with this group of companies?
If you'll permit me to just ask the audience a question, how many people in the audience have a smartphone? Could you just raise your hand? Okay, this is the answer to your question. Okay. The penetration, and of course we're here in Thailand. I mean, I think we could go to almost any major economy and we're going to have the same sort of representation, the same sort of penetration. And because the smartphone has become so prevalent, so ubiquitous, it's allowed companies like Google, like Facebook, to really capitalize and scale on that total addressable market in a way that they couldn't before. And so I think we're really just seeing the early stages of that, quite frankly.
The early stage, okay. So you see, the performance will you continue to capture all the.
What would slow it down? What would stop it?
Okay.
I mean, I really think in many ways when we think about technology, we think very long term. We think it's very transformative for the entire global economy. We see the potential going so far beyond what we see today that we want to be a part of that, and that's how our investments are structured.
Okay, just because you are based in Japan, so just want to see whether Japan is a more tech-savvy country. So could you please share with us about the development, in technology space in Japan? Yeah, please.
I mean, Japan's real core competency, no question, is in factory automation. Their ability in robotics is arguably second to none. Okay. It is so advanced. What they're doing in terms of artificial intelligence and the way that's being infused into robotics is really pioneering. Mm-hmm. And we're very excited about that in terms of the way we think about that technology in our investments and in our thesis around factory automation. Okay,
so but if you think about the Japan, the auto is kind of the fuel engine, but nowadays the move to autonomous driving and EV car. Mm-hmm. So how the Japanese automaker aim to cope with that kind of change?
I mean, autonomous driving is just going to really redefine the way we move around, the way we transport, and it will also completely redefine the way we think about time. How many of you actually commute to work? If you commute to work, it's maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour in Bangkok traffic. Mm-hmm. That's a waste of time. Okay. So the ability to have a car actually drive you somewhere means that you, as a consumer, can use that time more productively, more progressively, in a way that maybe you can spend more money during that 1 hour. It can be good for the economy. Mm-hmm. So it just means it will redefine the way we think about transportation. So we want to make sure that we, as investors, are geared into that trend.
So is it the auto industry in Japan gonna have some difficulty in terms of the new technology coming in with all the?
Our view is that the strong players will adapt to these movements. And as investors, we can pick and choose. This is the beauty of active stock investing as opposed to being invested in an ETF. An ETF will own it all. But we will look at that value chain and say, we want to be invested in the areas of the market that will see the greatest upside, that will benefit the most from that long-term trend, so that we can profit and generate alpha from it.
Okay. So in Japan, so they try to kind of cope with that one with the technology that exists currently with all the what you call it, the one that that can track the movement. Is that the
sensors? I mean, sensors. Absolutely. I mean, Japanese companies have been at the forefront of developing many of the sensors around that. And these are companies that we pay very close attention to, where we see real innovation around this trend, and we just continue to want to be coupled with it. We want to be partnered with it in a way that we understand what the long-term implications for earnings growth are, because we think that's really where we can provide the most value add to our customers and where we see the most upside in our portfolios.
Also, this is the one thing that technology kind of get into, the auto. But how about that? Can you touch upon the fact that the tech company disrupt the traditional business, like Amazon, try to disrupt hurting the retail sector via their e-commerce, or the Netflix it destroy cable TV industry, stuff like that. Is it anything to share?
I mean, technology is progress. It's movement forward. It's taking old business models and rethinking them in ways that are more efficient and ultimately better for consumers. They save money, and in the end, I think two people win in this scenario. One is the consumer wins, usually with lower prices, faster service, better products, better quality, faster, better everything. And the shareholder wins because of the disintermediation. And so usually that translates into better earnings growth, better scale, bigger sales growth. I mean, again, it depends on the company, but if I were to stereotype and generalize and say this is where it's going, I would say long term, if we stand here 10 years from now, the trends will be that the consumer will benefit and ultimately the shareholder will benefit.
Is there any other sample of the tech that disrupt the traditional business other than these two that I mentioned? Is there any other
Technology is probably going to create vibrations in every dimension of the economy in the next 10 years. It is going to creep into our lives in ways I think we can't even really imagine. And I think that maybe the question to really ask is, where won't technology creep in?
Okay.
And I have a really simple answer to that. I think technology will not replace common sense. Technology will not replace emotions. Technology will not replace human creativity. It will ultimately replace anything that is rote, that is simple, that is a process, that is standardized. But when we really think about who we are philosophically, if we just step back and say, as humans, what do we bring to the table? What makes us great? And it is our ability to innovate, to come up with new ideas, to survive, to look at a situation and react to it, to connect with people, to develop relationships, to build things. And I believe that technology will only incentivize us to do that more and more and more in the future. So I think we can continue to progress and be a greater human race.
So does mean like all the traditional business or sector will be like, took over by the technology? Is that in that sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. Like how the ASEAN or technology team be able to compete with the tech firm in the Silicon Valley? So since you're based in Asia, so is there anything that we can compete with them? Maybe in terms of artificial intelligence or any technology?
I mean, I think that there are so many tech companies that are still emerging. We do quite a bit of investment on the private side at Fidelity. So I'm consistently amazed at the number of small emerging companies with new technologies that are coming about. And I think we're seeing quite a few of those in Asia. I think there's a real opportunity for Asian inventors and entrepreneurs to really lead in some very remarkable ways. And I mean, there's no question that your Facebook, your Amazon, Netflix, and Google are great companies, but they're huge companies. And I think we want to find the next FANG stocks. And that's really what I spend a lot of time thinking about, is where are the next Alibabas, where are the next 10 cents coming from? Because you could argue that those are the big established companies. Are they going to really double from here? We want to be in the stocks that are the small, mid-cap, growthy type stocks, where we think over the next 5 to 10 years, they will become those next FANG stocks or the next Alibabas of this generation.
Yes. Can you tell us more a bit like how you kind of define those kind of company in terms of what is going on around the world with all the new tech thing like that? Yeah, please.
I mean, we're very bottom up. We're just out there kicking the tires, talking to lots of people, lots of inventors and entrepreneurs, and really trying to understand the direction of this technology and what types of areas of technology. I mean, we say technology, it's an enormous universe that encompasses so many different things, whether it's on one spectrum, AI that's trying to replicate what humans actually do, or something as simple as e-commerce, where you can just buy a TV online and have it delivered, and then everything in between. And I think what we try to identify are the areas of the market that thematically will really benefit from where the market is evolving toward and what sort of scalable businesses will evolve globally over the next 10 years, and to make sure we're on board and positioned correctly.
But if you look at the sample of the big company, as you said, like Amazon and Alibaba, I think both of them like the e-commerce type of thing, but the business model is quite different. So how you see like this thing, and if you go to look at another big company or potential big one, so how you can identify or capture it, because like both are e-commerce but maybe focus on different kind of approach. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's really where the investment process comes down to, really understanding company management, understanding the fundamentals, analyzing the business, really looking at not only the track record, what they have done, but the vision and what will they do in the future? How will they use their capital to drive growth and create growth? How will they invest in new businesses? And how will that ultimately determine the return for the investor? And most importantly, what are we paying for it? How
Okay.
much? What's the valuation? And is it worth it? Is what we're paying worth it for the growth? And I think that's a conversation we consistently have. Sometimes it is worth a higher valuation because the growth is so profound. But then other times we would question it.
Okay. So like in your team, you have the hiring like PhD in tech or engineer or how to help you identify those kind of the new technology, whether it's valid or is it relevant to the future?
Yeah, we work with those people.
Okay.
So we'll do an interview with them on any kind of specific types of technology. I mean, certainly I don't have a good understanding of what an AI algorithm looks like, what determines its bread and butter, what makes it good. If you gave me 3 different AI algorithms, I wouldn't be able to tell you which one is the superior one.
Okay.
But we can work with people that actually can
Okay.
and help us understand the technology to give us an edge. I mean, the other thing that we are doing and thinking about is using AI and big data in our own investment process. I think the way natural fundamental active investment has been done hasn't really innovated much in the past 15 years. It's a lot of it is about kicking the tires, going out, meeting companies, seeing what's happening. But actually, there are a lot of things that we can use technology for to bring into our investment process to get a lot more of an edge in terms of how we think about names and how we think about companies and whether or not they're telling the truth or not. We like to believe that companies always, are giving us a straight story, but sometimes they don't. And that's a really important dimension to using technology and big data in our own investment process as well to give us an edge.
Okay. Since like you involved in all the technology or see, a lot happening. So like here in Thailand, we try to kind of do the kind of help the startup, the incubator or here, so on and so forth. So can you share with us about this kind of startup market on what happening or how it developed in other country?
Yeah, I mean, I think this Silicon Valley, I mean, it's no secret that the startup market the past couple of years has been on fire.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of strength there. But, I think startup market, we're actually seeing quite a bit of action in Japan, which is interesting. We do see some incubation there and some really interesting, edgy companies that, I mean, I've seen, just as an example, there's a building called Egg, and it's literally all these little startups that are on several floors of an office building where they just have funding and they all work together. It reminds me a lot of the hedge fund industry 10 years ago, where you'd have all these little hedge funds starting up in a bank, and they'd be in an office building, and then hopefully 3 or 4 of them would make it big and would grow and move out of that. And I think that's what they're trying to create. We're seeing it, I think, in a lot of places where I think the technology opportunities are becoming very apparent on a global level and just long term. It's not just something as simple as e-commerce. I think the disintermediation angle is becoming so much more real. And the fact that we're starting to see technology come into financial services,
yes,
where it was really almost forbidden, is really interesting with all the fintech and blockchain.
Yeah, like you heard like Jack Ma said that the Chinese market will be like cashless society in 5-year time.
Indeed.
Is it possible from your view or from your research?
I mean, the Chinese market has surprised many of us in terms of the way that it has leapfrogged many developed countries and taken on and absorbed technology in a very, very aggressive way. I mean, the numbers are staggering in China in terms, I mean, Alibaba is the perfect example, but there are so many other great examples of small apps or technologies, startups all over China that have really been tremendously successful.
What is the driving force of that?
I don't think they have the legacy businesses.
Okay.
That's a big part of it. And a lot, in China, a lot of the legacy businesses are state-owned enterprises. So the Chinese government, in many ways, is trying to get away from those and trying to focus more. It's trying to pivot. It can't shut those down. But it's trying to pivot and say, let's try to focus on some of these new innovations, this entrepreneurship that we have going on in China, the creativity, the drive of our people. And and try to put some muscle behind that. And I think, we're really seeing that happen. And you don't have a lot of these old economy businesses that were started, say, 20 or 30 years ago. China just went straight to mobile. Okay. They went straight into a lot of these technologies that we didn't have the luxury of doing. There was a transition process in developed markets.
Like beside of the Silicon Valley and China market, like is it anywhere around the world that they develop something like uniqueness for that market, like in Europe or in India that you come across?
I'm sorry?
That develop the new technology in maybe Europe somewhere or India or any other country?
I feel like there's constantly new technologies coming out.
Around the world?
We are getting, I would say every couple of weeks I'm meeting some company that's got some new interesting idea that they're floating to the market, or we're thinking about, or we're talking about in our global tech fund, or we're thinking about from a multiple of angles. We're either worried about it because it might affect our existing holdings because of competitive positioning. We're wondering how it might affect our current thesis. We're thinking about it from a business angle. I think there's just so much going on. That's why our thesis is that that's the reason the tech sector has been and will likely continue to be quite strong.
Okay. So like you mentioned that you try to kind of evaluate, the new technology coming in and see whether they're gonna, impact for the whatever you hold it or invest in. Like, how you kind of manage this? Like, do you group it as a different kind of sector, or so how your team kind of grouping these kind of technology and to see whether it's gonna be impact or
Yeah, for us, I think our main leverage point is our collaboration and the fact that I have a team of 17 analysts and a data manager in Tokyo. We're just constantly looking at everything going on locally in that market. But my team plugs into the team in Southeast Asia, the team in China, and then regionally we plug into the team in London. And we're constantly getting together on offsite trips, collaborating on calls, or trying to figure out, all right, are we calling these names correctly? Are we making sure that we're in the right trends, the right themes? Going to Silicon Valley, knocking on the door of the major companies and saying, we want to hear more about your company. We want to hear more about your products, your future, how you're thinking about it, and really getting in, rolling up our sleeves and understanding what's driving this technology and making sure that we're not a part of the technology of now and yesterday, but that we are part of the technology of tomorrow. So that when we wake up 5 years from now, we are holding the newest version of Alibaba or the newest version of Facebook rather than the old version.
Okay, since you mentioned this, so what you think about the Bitcoin and the blockchain technology is here to stay, and the cryptocurrency? How you view on that kind of thing? Recently we heard that China has been banned for that ICO. Yep.
Our view is that it's not going away.
Okay.
It's just going to continue. How it continues and how certain countries, certain regulatory bodies, certain organizations absorb that's really where the controversy comes from. That's where it's not entirely clear.
So how they have to kind of try to work it out, how to manage it. Okay.
It will not be consistent. It will be very nuanced.
Any new trend or technology that you come across that you can share with us so we can looking toward those kind of technology recently?
I have to be a little bit careful, because of our disclosure.
Sure.
But, I think the areas that we are really carefully looking at are areas of the market that are very underpenetrated, that still provide a lot of upside in terms of how, whether it's e-commerce or digital or apps, all these sorts of things could continue to penetrate. That would be one area that we're really carefully looking at. I think there are some really interesting, attractive pockets that still have not fully monetized or scaled the potential that we have seen in the U.S. And so the questions that we're asking is, could we see that replicated in some of these other markets? And so we've been doing a lot of work on that. And I think around actual technology, I think the cloud provides tremendous opportunity. You know, we've been spending a lot of time thinking about where the cloud will take us and how we can really benefit from that as well.
Okay, that's good. Do you still optimistic about the technology sector and in the near future? Like, look like, you know, whatever you mentioned is that everything gonna be replaced or assisted by the technology, like disrupt.
In our view, everything that we touch will have some level of technology in it going forward. You know, it will be the Internet of Things. Things will be much more connected. It will be a much more direct world we will live in, where it will be a lot easier for vendors to connect directly with consumers. It will be a lot faster, probably a lot more seamless than what we have seen in the past.
Any challenge or the setback on this kind of thing that you see?
Yeah, so I think that for me, the thing that our team really talks about, our biggest concern in the market is regulation. So if you look at a Facebook, a Google, an Amazon, these companies have just massively gone global and at really very little government regulation. And there, I think, is some discussion about whether or not in the future the government may come in and say, hey, we're not totally comfortable with all the data that you have. We're not totally comfortable with how much you know about all of our people, about how much insight you have into the world. We may want to have either access to that, partner with you, or regulate you. So I think that's certainly something up for discussion, because I think if they started to really regulate some of these larger players, that might be a risk out there.
So the impact for their earning or
Exactly.
the new idea that come
Indeed.
into the market. Okay. In which sector that you think the IT will come and, you know, push, disrupt the biggest, you know, from you look at the big picture on this one, because it will be related to the retail, you know, in the auto, in the AI, you know, names field. So is it any kind of group or the sector? Because like if the technology come and disrupt it, that means the traditional business will somehow, you know, go away. Is it?
I mean, it's like all things, and I think that's the benefit of being an active manager, is that we can look to the future and say, how do we want to be positioned? We want to be a part of the future innovation. We want to be part of the next generation of alpha. We don't want to rest our laurels on the existing business models or the business models that worked in the past. We want to be positioned, and we want our clients to be positioned with what's next, because that's really where the money is to be made, and ultimately the value proposition that we deliver.
Yep. Back to my first question, is it any sector that you think is going to be like increased quite often with the technology?
I mean, our sense is that around the cloud there will be significance. I think AI and big data will continue to be quite profound, but I think what will happen around AI and big data is that these will, I think right now they're embryonic business models, but will ultimately evolve into the real business models potentially going forward. And I think ultimately there will be some markets that will really dramatically expand in terms of the way they absorb a lot of this new technology. And those are the areas that we're very much focused on, and the way we think about it.
Okay. So with this, so do you think that the robot will replace human being, or you know, or take over the world as such?
The robot will not replace the human being. The human being is a very complex. It's a very complex human, and being human means that you have an emotional intelligence. It means you have common sense. It means that you can do things that go off script. So if you're told to do these 5 things, but then you see something and you say, you know what, this thing number 4 doesn't make sense. I think I'm going to just kind of do my own thing because that's the right answer. That's the right way to go. A robot cannot do that. It can't think out of the box. It can't question authority. And I think that's ultimately what's great about it is that, at least when I think about my day, the most painful things I have to do in a day are things like deleting emails. I would love to have a robot delete emails that I've either already read or are not useful. Okay, I calculated how much time I spend in a year deleting emails.
Okay.
So it's about 15 minutes a day. So 15 minutes a day times 5 is 75 minutes a week times 4. And then you go from there. This is hours and hours a year I'm spending deleting emails. A robot could do that.
Okay, so you
So
just
I
put-
could use those hours and come up, I could do more speeches for you, Pete.
Okay.
I could do more things that are productive, that allow me to connect with people, allow me to be creative, and allow me to add a lot more value than just simply deleting emails. And I think this is where robots will really add a lot of value to our economy and to our business models that are existing out, that currently exist, so that we as shareholders can really benefit and leverage the existing technologies of our companies.
But it will also impact all the worker as well, because we get the machine to work for the staff, for human being.
I mean, that's the controversy, but that's progress. I mean, that could have been said the past 1,000 years.
Yep.
We would still be, living in a very simple way if it wasn't for progress. Progress is ultimately what forces humans to innovate and to adapt and to move beyond their existing skill set so that they do more and think more and are more progressive.
Okay.
And I think that AI and robotics and all these things are just one dimension of that will drive it forward.
So like since from my feeling is that you kind of very positive on the technology sector, so they're gonna do more of things in the future. But do you think like with the price that they put in for the future earning, is it some what you call it, some risk, for the not deliver whatever a lot of people expected on that kind of thing, because it have been like increased 4, 5, 6
I mean, I would say if anything, I actually see opportunity there, because if you look at the U.S. economic data, one of the things in the U.S. economic data that jumps out is that the U.S. worker has not improved their productivity. They have not become a more productive worker. And our sense is that maybe some of these new innovations that we're starting to see out there could actually start to make workers around the world, not just the US, but globally, a lot more productive so that they can spend more of their time on the things that make them competitive, that make them interesting, that make people want to pay for their services. And that ultimately, usually, from my experience, leads to earnings growth.
Okay, so still
It's not deleting emails.
Okay. So how about in terms of security kind of thing, I try to kind of think something that might kind of hold the technology back. You said like, maybe the regulator is just think like maybe the security or in that if they want to kind of use it. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some issues around culture too. What's interesting about the Japanese market is that it's very underpenetrated for e-commerce.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's one of the lowest penetration markets for e-commerce in the developed world, which is unusual when you think about Japan and innovation.
Surprised me.
It's quite a high-tech society, but I think there are a number of things that have slowed that down. So it'll be pretty interesting to look at it over the next 5 years. Amazon has become a lot more aggressive in the Japanese market in the past 12 months, and I think we're starting to see some evidence that might be turning a corner.
So like, okay, when you mention Amazon and Alibaba, you think who's gonna win on this e-commerce model?
I'm sorry?
They have the different e-commerce model, right?
Right.
Amazon is try to acquire, get a big asset. Alibaba is try to support the SME. So what you take on these two different business model?
I mean, our sense is that there's room for both, and that they will drive, and they have driven. I mean, they are the example of e-commerce, both of them. They are the leading players right now in the world. I think we've tried to step back more recently and say, okay, these guys have been very, very successful. They're enormous. They have enormous numbers of customers, and their businesses are really showing very strong growth. But what could be the next generation of players that will evolve around that and become the next Amazons or the next Alibabas? And I think those are the really interesting questions that we really try to grapple with, and think about, going forward, what could e-commerce maybe look like, or could it be, could they actually be on the way out? What's going to allow these companies to maintain their competitive advantage? Because as quickly as they've come up, as you know, with so many industries that we've seen, it's just as easy to go down. So we want to make sure that anything that we hold in our portfolios, anything that we're talking about, we want to feel like it's sustainable. There's a real sustainability to that business model. And so that's why, I would say we consistently look around that and dig into that.
Okay, so you're afraid that whatever you invest might be disrupted by another new technology coming in?
Could be. It could be.
Yep. I have a question on the cashless society. Right now we have a couple of countries like Sweden or China that they try to do the cashless kind of society in terms of don't use money, use the electronic, that kind of thing. Any concern or anything that you look at in this kind of area in terms of the investment?
I mean, Bitcoin is absolutely fascinating. It is potentially one of the most exciting innovations of our generation if it really becomes something that is very tangible and ultimately replaces money as we know it today, or credit cards. I mean, it could become something very innovative and become part of the global economy in a way we can't even imagine. I mean, just very anecdotally, at Fidelity's Boston-based Innovation Center, we can actually use Bitcoins. We're actually experimenting with them and looking at them to try to understand how they may affect the future of our economy.
Okay. So look like from talking to you, everything is kind of so bright and in the future and the technology will come. Is it any from you, when you wake up at night about the technology that kind of hold you back, not the regulator or anything at all? Because we try to see here in Thailand we see the internet is going up, bubble, but you said okay, they have some earning, justify, there's a lot of activity or transaction support, those kind of things, so, and you mentioned that in the future there's so many to come and replace it and get people more efficient, so everything it look like blue sky, from what I'm feeling from you. So is anything that we should let the investor aware, or something that happened in other country that
I mean, I think I'll just grab that what you said, about becoming more productive. If you ask most people, and I'm guessing that the audience would agree, is that when you ask people what do you want, a lot of people will say, I wish I had more time.
Okay.
I wish I had more time to spend with my family. I wish I had more time to relax. I wish I had more time to have fun and still maintain the same levels of success that I've been able to enjoy the past 10 years. And I think that in and of itself is something that we have not been able to do because we haven't been able to be as efficient or as productive. So maybe what ultimately happens is that people just become they just have a lot more fun and they just enjoy their lives more and become a lot more efficient and productive in the wake of that. And what I guess would worry me is that people themselves can't do that. And if I think about my own father, he always worked really hard.
Yep.
And we'd be on vacation and he'd always be calling somebody.
Oh, right. Okay, so they kind of let go.
Exactly.
Okay.
He just couldn't,
So that is good worry though.
Right. So maybe, the ability of humans to just not want work-life balance. They just may not be comfortable with it.
Okay.
They may just want to continue
just doing
on
something.
The consistent path that they've been on. I think one of the earlier presentations, somebody said that, you know, they had someone in retirement and the person was in retirement and they were still bored. So that, I think that's ultimately what productivity and efficiency will lead to, is it'll give us more free time.
Okay.
So how we use that is up to us. So maybe we reinvest it back in.
Okay. All right.
And it doesn't play out the way that I'm assuming it may.
Okay.
It's hard to say.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Melissa, for sharing the
My
idea.
pleasure.
Okay. So สรุปนิดนึงนะครับก็คุยกับคุณมาริซาเนี่ยท่าทางเขาก็มองว่าเทคยังคงไปต่อนะครับเนื่องจากเหมือนกับทุกคนเริ่มมาใช้โมบายนะฮะได้ใช้แล้วก็ได้มี transaction อะไรต่างๆที่มากขึ้นนะครับรู้สึกคุยกับเขาเนี่ยทุกอย่าง positive หมดเลยเกี่ยวกับการนำเทคโนโลยีเข้ามาใช้เพื่อเกิดความ efficient นะครับทำให้เรามีเวลามากขึ้นนะครับขณะเดียวกันเขาก็ยังเมนชั่นว่าจริงๆแล้วเนี่ยมันมีอะไรที่มา disrupt นะฮะแต่ก็ต้องระวังเหมือนกันว่าอาจจะมี new technology ที่เข้ามาแทนไอ้เทคโนโลยีเก่าๆนะครับซึ่งก็บอกว่าถ้าเป็น active management นะครับอย่างที่ทีมเขาที่มี18คนทั่วโลกเนี่ยนะครับก็พยายามที่จะหาว่าอะไรก็ตามที่จะอาจจะมี potential นะครับมีผลที่จะเข้ามากระทบกับไอ้สิ่งที่เขาลงทุนซึ่งอาจจะrelate กับ business ที่พัฒนามาแล้วแต่อาจจะมีสิ่งที่พัฒนามากขึ้นนะครับในแง่ของ cloud computing นะครับแล้วก็ต่างๆอีกมากมายนะทั้งออโต้นะฮะทั้งรถยนต์นะครับและเรื่องของ Bitcoin นะฮะหรือที่เกิดขึ้นแล้วก็ cryptocurrency นะครับก็คิดว่าน่าจะอยู่แต่เพียงอาจจะต้องคุยกับในแง่ regulator นะฮะให้ชัดเจนนะครับแล้วก็อาจจะเป็นสิ่งที่ห่วงก็คือว่านะฮะเราอาจจะมีเวลาว่างมากเกินไปนะครับอาจจะไม่สามารถที่จะปล่อยวางนะครับใช้เวลาอย่างenjoy นะครับแล้วก็สิ่งที่เขาคิดว่านะฮะอย่างไรก็ตามเนี่ยเทคโนโลยีไม่สามารถที่จะมาทดแทน human ได้หรือบุคคลได้นะครับเพราะว่ามันต้องมีทั้ง imagination มีทั้งความคิดมีทั้งอะไรต่างๆนะครับก็เป็นสิ่งที่นะฮะเราได้ฟีดแบ็กแล้วจากประสบการณ์ที่มาริซานะฮะทำงานแล้วก็ดูเทคโนโลยีทั่วโลกนะครับจาก Fidelity Team ครับขอบคุณนะครับ